The following video contains spoilers for the Ancient Magus's Bride. Viewer discretion is advised. Death is something that no one likes to talk about. It brings up emotions that many are not equipped to deal with. The only time I ever really talk about death is if someone famous or someone I know personally passes, the conversation usually being filled with, "What a shame," or "It wasn't their time," or "We'll miss them." And even though I don't talk about death a lot, I think about it a great deal. What comes after we go? How will I be remembered by the ones I loved when I go? What will I leave behind for them to remember me by? And I think about those who don't have anyone to remember them. I wonder, what about those who don't have anything to leave behind? How will they find comfort in death? Death has a grand presence in the Ancient Magus's Bride and is prominently one of its overarching themes. It is at the heels of most of the characters and is actually discussed pretty openly. My goal today is to take a look at 3 ways the subject of death is handled in the Ancient Magus's Bride as it pertains to the characters Uncle Nevin, Joel, and Ruth. According to Merriam-Webster, there are 8 definitions of death. Out of the 8 definitions, my favorite is death is the ruin or destruction of something. I think this definition is incredibly interesting because it is the exact opposite viewpoint of death to that of Uncle Nevin. Uncle Nevin is an elderly dragon who Chisei met when she was first brought to the dragon nesting ground by Lindau. When it is revealed that Uncle Nevin is about to die, Chisei becomes incredibly sad and introspective. She is someone who does not have a positive relationship with death. Her mother committed suicide when she was younger, and she even contemplated suicide herself. During her conversation with Nevin about death, he reveals that dragons are not afraid of dying. Since dragons live their lives to the fullest, they will have no regrets when they die. The younger dragons cheer for Nevin as he calmly awaits death. The young dragons, in fact, are excited for their own deaths. One little dragon claims that they hope to become a tall tree just like Uncle Nevin when they die. The dragons, from the moment they are born, are told that death is not the ruin or destruction of something, but rather leads to the creation of life. One of Uncle Nevin's dying wishes is for Chisei to use his branches to make her first wand. In his death, Uncle Nevin transforms into a new form of life that could be used and repurposed. He's not forgotten in death, but lives on in what he's left behind, which is comforting for Chisei. This viewpoint of death reminds me a lot of how many artists view death. Even if they are gone, their art will outlive them and keep their legacy alive. The young dragons will never forget Nevin and all the dragons that came before him because his tree will provide for them, bringing new life. Let's move on to Joel. We meet the elderly Joel in episode 9. He is the object of Lian and Shi named Redcurrant's affection. She refuses to steal his life force. However, as we learn later, due to her presence, she has been unintentionally draining his life. Similar to Uncle Nevin, Joel has one dying wish: to see the red-eyed girl living in his garden one last time. After acquiring some fairy ointment made by Chisei, Redcurrant puts it on Joel's eyes in order to allow him to see her before he passes. Upon seeing her for the first time, Joel reveals that the garden he kept was for his late wife, and because of Redcurrant's presence in it, he was inspired to carry on with his own life. We see this theme again of accepting death and finding comfort in having lived a full life. Joel, like Uncle Nevin, greets death with open arms and claims that he had a happy life because of the presence Redcurrant had in his garden, and Joel left behind his garden for Redcurrant to remember him by. But I want to make it clear that Redcurrant did not want to let go of Joel as easily as the baby dragons did to Uncle Nevin. She initially begged Chisei and Elias to do something, imploring them to save his life, and when they couldn't, she completely shut down and didn't leave his side, even though she knew her presence was killing him. Acceptance only came once she realized Joel would have wanted her to continue on and keep living her life. And even though she accepts it, she is left devastated and vows to stay with the garden until the end of time or until Joel returns to avoid hurting humans and potentially harming another life. This, in my opinion, is the middle ground of how this show deals with death. We have one character opening themselves to death while another pushes it away. While it's nice and reassuring to see characters in media that have no fear when it comes to death, it's not a common feeling. What is common is to reject death completely. One of my favorite characters in the show is Chisei's familiar Ruth. And yeah, it's mainly because I'm a huge nerd and I love the biblical story behind his name and how it relates to him being a familiar. But I also love his origin story and how it pertains to the subject of death. Ruth's original name was Ulysses, which was given to him by his previous owner Isabel. Ulysses and Isabel were inseparable. He loved her so much that he started to believe he was her actual human brother. Unfortunately, Isabel was killed at a young age, and at her funeral, Ruth believed she would wake up eventually and stayed by her grave until he died. Sound familiar, Futurama fans? And due to his overwhelming desire to see his owner again and rejection of her death, he came back as a Black Grim, a spectral protector of the church and graveyard. I first experienced death when I was 17 years old. One of my best friends passed away from an unexpected heart attack, and at first, I refused to believe he was gone. I'd seen him not even 48 hours prior, and now I'd never see him again for the rest of my life. It took a lot of time, but reality set in, and I accepted that he passed and was able to move on. Now imagine losing someone and denying that they ever left. Waiting and waiting and waiting up until you take your last breath. In his refusal to accept Isabel's death, Ulysses created an illusion in his mind that she would return, which spurred his own demise. To add to the illusion, he continued believing he was human up until his meeting with Sensei. He lost sight of who he was and let the trauma of Isabel's death overtake him. There are so many who are like Ruth. They don't want to see their loved ones go and hold on to them for dear life. The reason why some of the characters can accept death so easily is because they were elderly and had time to reflect. By the time their journey through grief was complete, they were already at death's door. It took years for Ulysses to finally accept that Isabel was really dead, and his story takes time to run its course. But once he did, he was able to move on and become Ruth and start a new life by Sensei's side. Again, death leading on to the creation of something new. So what am I getting at here? Well, death is unavoidable. People will leave us, but there will be others who will come into our lives and fill their place. The Ancient Magus's Bride shows us that we can accept their passing and continue on, keeping the memory of those who've come before us alive. And if you're someone who rejects death, it showed us that that's perfectly normal. Just know that for you, there will be a tomorrow, and you should try to make the most out of your life while you can. It's just like Uncle Nevin said, we must continue to soar. More importantly, we must continue to live. Hi friends! Thank you so much for watching this week's video on the Ancient Magus's Bride and Death. Just to let you know, we won't have a video uploaded next week, but there will be one uploaded the week after, so not the first week of February, but the second week of February, we'll have a brand new video about something anime or manga related. So thank you again, I hope you have a great week off, and yeah, see you real soon. Bye!